What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coast to Coast Sports. I'm your host, David Street, and if you've missed our last couple of episodes, my co-host Maddie is on his honeymoon right now, so filling in for him is Texas Said.
Howdy, everybody.
Awesome. So we got a few things to cover, and first things first is we're going to be talking about recruiting. And Ed, I actually want to give the mic to you. So why don't you start off? Tell us how Texas recruiting has been. Any updates that we should expect? Just give us your take on Texas recruiting right now.
Well, Texas recruiting right now is uh, really getting a train that's gaining momentum. We are looking at a total of 18 prospects right now that are already verbally committed. Most recently, Brandon Baker, the offensive lineman from Santa Ana, California, he was recently moved to a 5-star. That makes our second 5-star in this recruiting round, and we're very excited to have him because the more we can build that offensive line, the more we are going to be ready and able to get into this SEC schedule that we're looking forward to next year. Also, we got Colin Simmons, defensive end from Duncanville. We got him in August. He's our other 5-star that's in this class right now. We're very excited to have him. Overall, if you're looking at the Rivals recruiting rank, we're number 14. We're not at the same level as our buddy David Street here, who's in the top 10, but we are enjoying what we're getting right now, and the train is moving forward. Now, what I anticipate is us filling in with the recruiting, but when we get to the transfer season, that's when things are going to get really interesting. But overall, our average rank, according to Rivals, is 3.72 of the 18 recruits that we have, and that actually does give us a blue chip percentage of 66.67, which is one of the highest. Now, blue chip percentage, if you're not aware, is 5-stars and 4-stars that we've targeted that we've been able to successfully get committed to our program. So I'm very excited about that. The other part that I'm excited about is the average distance from the hometown of the recruit to Texas is only 450 miles. That in turn means that Sarkeesian is shutting down the borders of the state of Texas, one of the most fertile recruiting grounds in the country, and bringing them onto the 40 acres, which I'm super excited about because if y'all remember, that is exactly how Mac Brown did it when we won our championship and went on that incredible run in the early 2000s. Now, that's the main portion of my update right now. But Street, I did want to ask you a question though. We just recently offered Isaiah Williams, a wide receiver that is currently committed to Florida, and I wanted to get your take on programs targeting other programs' recruits that have already committed.
I have absolutely no problem with it whatsoever because for one, that's just part of the recruiting game. If if a coach stops recruiting a player the minute that player recruits to another school, then I don't want that coach anymore. I want them to help the hell out of that program. And I would be a major hypocrite if I said, "Oh well, I don't want you guys to recruit our players," and then I turn around and I express joy over Billy and our top recruiters recruiting other guys that are already committed. That's just part of the game. I know there was one player, I don't remember his name, but he was initially committed at FSU, and he had some pretty choice words to say about Florida. But Billy and the guys never gave up, and eventually we were able to flip him. So I have no problem with it whatsoever. And if you do, get over it. That's just part of the game, people.
That's a fantastic take on that. But considering that He is currently a 4-star wide receiver that is committed to Florida. What else do you have in the pipeline right now
As in, like who else do we have?
in the recruiting and the recruitment?
Like who we have right now, or like who we're favored to get?
Well, and your recruiting update for Florida. What are we looking at?
Okay, yeah, perfect. So so right now for Florida recruiting, we are ranked number 3 per 24/7 Sports, so we have an excellent class overall. The majority of our recruits hail from the Sunshine State, but we also have recruits from all over the country, including Georgia, Maryland, Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Virginia. Right now, our biggest strength is our quarterback. DJ Lagway has been an absolute monster this year, and our linebacker class is also very strong. Our biggest weakness, I would say, is our offensive line class, because as of right now, we only got one 4-star recruit. So I would really like to see more beef in the offensive line, because you need that kind of you need better offense. You need to recruit better offensive linemen if you want to compete in the SEC. So I do have a big update. So if you hadn't been following along, so tomorrow, 5-star in-state defensive lineman LJ McCray will commit. So his stats right now through 6 games, he's got 36 total tackles, 15 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks. And if you just watch this guy's tape, if you watch his highlights, he explodes through offensive lines with a blazing burst of speed. It is darn near impossible to even contain this guy. And here's something else about LJ too. From what I've read, and from what I understand, from what I've listened to, Ed, nobody truly knows what's going to happen here with LJ. Nobody knows where LJ is going to commit, other than LJ himself and his family. He's been doing a fantastic job of keeping this recruitment secret. Nobody knows where he's going to go. I know that every school that is in the running feels great. I know that Florida feels great. I know that FSU feels great, and I'm sure that the other schools feel great as well. But this kind of reminds me of KJ Bolden, safety, 5-star safety out of the state of Georgia, where in that case nobody knew where KJ was going to go, and I believe at one point toward the end, it seemed like all the schools that were in his top 3, top 5, whatever, all had equally great chances. Now, personally, I thought that KJ was going to go to Georgia, just because, we all know that Kirby is a phenomenal recruiter. He's a defensive mastermind, and it's right there in UGA's backyard. But of course, we all know that KJ Bolden ended up committing to Florida State. So kudos to the boys in Tallahassee there. But we truly do not know what's going to happen with LJ. I should also note that just a couple hours ago, Zach Blowstein, who is an FSU reporter, I might add, for 24/7 Sports, he did log a prediction for Florida, so he thinks we're going to get Florida. But as I said, from what I understand, the family is not letting anything out. So Blowstein's guess is just as good as anybody else's. And if you were to ask me where I thought our chances of landing LJ McCray would be, like even just a month ago, I would have said that we have a great chance. Well, now my optimism has kind of died down a little bit. Not to the point where it's gotten to pessimism, but it's gone from I think we have a great shot to we'll see what happens, because we truly do not know what is going to happen with LJ here.
Fair enough. Fair enough. When we're talking about how these recruits, come into these programs, we're looking for star power. We're looking to get these 5 stars, looking to develop these players into what would have been 5 stars, and just, we're looking to have these players shoot off like a rocket and become some of the best players in college football. Well, what award is synonymous with the best player of college football. It is the Heisman. And David, who do you have so far as your top five in the Heisman race as we are looking at this season uh, after all the recruits have already been in our programs for the year?
Oh, top five, man, that's tough because I at least have my top two. But if I had to come up with a top five right off the top of my head, Michael Penix is the no brainer number one for me. Jaden Daniels, I'll put him at number two because even though Jaden Daniels has two losses already, his numbers are through the roof. Um, number so number one would be Penix. Number two would be Jaden Daniels. Number three, oh man, that is just you know what, Ed? I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know who like three through five are gonna be for me. My top two are very oh wait, actually, I would probably say maybe Shador Sanders as as number three. Colorado hasn't been that great lately, but but without Shador, I think they would lose every single game. So I can at least give you my top three: Penix, Daniels, who did I say? Sanders, and maybe Caleb Williams. Like I know Caleb Williams had a horrible game against Notre Dame, but overall his numbers are still good, and I also trust that Caleb will rebound throughout the rest of the season and get himself back into that Heisman race. And then, of course, other people you got to consider are Drake May and Jordan Travis. Even though personally, I don't think Jordan Travis's numbers have been good enough to warrant any Heisman consideration. FSU is undefeated, and he is their best player. Overall, you might say maybe you'll say Keon Coleman is their best player. But yeah, those are the guys I would say at this point: Penix, Daniels, Sanders, Williams, and maybe J Trav.
That is such an interesting list. Mine is completely different except for the top. I think we all looked at what Michael Penix Jr. was able to do against Oregon, and there's no way that anybody who watched that game can say that he doesn't deserve to be in first place of the talking heads talking about the Heisman vote. But I've got some surprises for you in mind. I've got Michael Penix Jr., as I've already said, the 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 2,300 yards for an undefeated Washington team is is a step above everybody else. Second, and here's where mine gets a little crazy, but follow me here. I've got Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback from Oklahoma, as my number two Heisman vote getter right now. He has a total of 21 touchdowns. That's 16 throwing, 5 rushing, with two turnovers, 1,878 yards passing, 208 yards at a 4.8 per rush, 4.8 rush average on the ground. That tells me that he is not only securing the ball, scoring touchdowns, he's running when it's necessary and really turning those runs into positive gains for Oklahoma. I know they're coming off a bye week. We'll probably see more of that same level of play from him going through the back half of their schedule. For number three, I've got JJ McCarthy out of Michigan. One thing that you will notice from those top three is those are all undefeated teams. For me, winning is a big part of being a Heisman front runner. You've got to be able to be good enough to win those games, not just put up unbelievable stats. So McCarthy, he is leading what I would consider the most dominant team in the top 10 right now. Yes, Georgia is number one, and they will be number one until they are knocked off. But Michigan is the most dominant team in the top 10, and McCarthy leads that offense. Last year is Blake Corum. This year, Blake Corum is a separate piece that's adding to the offense, but it is McCarthy's team all the way. and he has really backed everybody up, being the leader of that team. I've got Bo Nix. He's only lost to one game, a phenomenal game against Washington last week, and you know I have Jaden Daniels as my number 5. I know he has lost 2 games, and that's a big reason why I have him at number 5. But he has been all worldly up to this point. And if it wasn't for those couple of losses that, quite frankly, weren't his fault, but my thinking on it is that if he is that high level as a quarterback, then he can bring his team to victory despite the deficiencies that are on that team, namely that atrocious defense.
Yeah, it is absolutely shocking how bad LSU's defense is, especially because we know that on like their defensive personnel is great and like one of the best on paper. So it is just shocking how bad LSU's defense has been. But I want to do a little comparing here because to me, um, regardless of where things stand in the Heisman race, I think the two best quarterbacks right now are easily Michael Penix Jr. and Jaden Daniels. Like if we were just comparing quarterback play, regardless of wins and losses, then it's Penix number one for me and Penix or Jaden Daniels number two. Their numbers are comparable, especially in the passing game. Now Daniels is a pretty significantly better rusher than Penix is. Granted, I know that's because Penix is more of a pocket passer. He doesn't really run a lot, so maybe that's not a fair comparison. But still, but when it comes to the Heisman, these are the reasons why I have Penix over Daniels. Because one, Penix is undefeated, and I understand that ultimately you can't really pin wins or losses on a quarterback because the quarterback doesn't play defense, and that's a big reason why I have Shedeur Sanders up there high on my list because Colorado would be a horrible team without Shedeur Sanders. So I think that does have to matter a little bit. But at the end of the day, the voters do consider wins and losses. So whether we like it or not, that's just how it is. Penix does have a signature win, a huge signature win over Oregon, whereas Daniels' best win so far has been over Missouri. And Missouri is a good win, but nobody in their right mind is going to say that a win over Missouri is better than a win over Oregon. You're out of your freaking mind if you say otherwise. And here's the other thing too, is that Penix, unlike Daniels, has legitimately been great in every single game. And I'm not saying that Daniels has had any particularly bad games. And in fact, LSU fans will be quick to point out, well, hold up, Daniels has scored in every single game, and unlike Penix, and that's true. The one game that Penix didn't score in was Arizona. But here's the thing. Even though Daniels has scored in every single game, including FSU, it should be noted that in the FSU game, his one touchdown pass came in garbage time when FSU was already way ahead. And in the Arizona game, Penix didn't really need to do any scoring because Washington's run game was feeling it that night. I don't know if it was day or night, but you get my point. They were feeling it that game, and so that's why I have Penix over Daniels, and also just personally, I'm a huge fan of Penix. I've mentioned it on the show before, Ed, but there is some personal connection with Penix. I don't know Penix personally, but I have met his mom. She was at one point coworkers with my dad. She's a very sweet lady. Penix is from Tampa, and so just because of that hometown connection, I am really pulling for him here.
I totally get it. With Quinn Ewers, I still have him in my top 10 of Heisman hopefuls. He's a Texas guy. I'm a Texas guy. Us Texas guys, we kind of stick together as best we can. Yeah, sure, he spent a year over in Ohio State and, kind of figured things out a little bit. Realized not being at Texas was not a good place for him. So he came back home, and here we are. I've got him number 7 in my top 10 of Heisman hopefuls, but it's all going, that portion is going to all come down to the Red River rematch that we are all expecting in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, man, like my first two Heisman choices are no brainers, but after that, it is just anybody's game at this point. But actually, that actually kind of perfectly segues into the next segment, and I want to go over our playoff predictions. And so, before the season, I'm trying to remember my playoff prediction. I believe was, I don't remember what it was in the exact order, but I believe my four teams were Michigan, Alabama, um, Washington, and Clemson. Well, I'm going to change my prediction because, quite frankly, I have no choice but to change my prediction because already has a couple of losses, and there is no way in hell they're going to make the playoffs unless every other team has at least 2 losses. So I've been forced to make some changes here. And so right now, this is who I think is going to make the playoffs. As of right now, keep in mind this could easily change because it's been a crazy whirlwind season. So I think eventually Georgia is going to get knocked off that top spot, and I think Michigan is going to get to number one. I have Michigan number one. I have Washington number two. Okay, so those are my top two, and I feel pretty comfortable about that. Number three and number four, trying to decide on those was just torture to me, Ed, because I think you mentioned last show that like first the teams ranked 1 through 12 all have a great shot of making playoffs. And that is just so true. I just had so much trouble trying to figure out who is in my 3 and 4 spot. But as of right now, and again, this could change, but as of right now, I have FSU in my third spot. Okay. I think FSU is going to roll through the season undefeated. The game against us will be very interesting. I would not be surprised if we won that one because one, we've been a lot better than people expected. Graham Mertz has been way better than people expected, and it's at home. But FSU is still the overall better team, so I think FSU will pull through. Will pull through there. And then number four, Ed, I got Alabama. Alabama was my pick to win the national championship for the season. They've kind of gotten off to a slow start for Alabama standards. They looked horrible against Texas, but slowly but surely, Alabama is kind of they're getting better. Jalen Milroe is getting better as a quarterback, and they're just kind of reminding people here, like, hey guys, remember us? Yeah, we are still Alabama here, and we're not going to go away. So yeah, as of right now, it's Michigan number one, Washington number two, FSU number three, Alabama number four. I really wanted to include teams like like Texas or Oklahoma or Oregon, but these are my four teams right now.
Hey, I totally respect it. Like I said last week, with the top 12 teams, vying for 4 playoff spots, complete carnage is about to take place over the last half of the season. I do have, 3 separate scenarios. And the only consistent team that I have in those scenarios is Michigan. Michigan is, like I said before, is the most dominant team in the top 10 that I can see. I think they will be able to get through Penn State. They'll be able to get through Ohio State in the game. And, obviously they're going to walk through the Big 12 West because that is a hot dog water of a conference right now. So, when we're talking about Michigan being in that top 4, in one scenario, I've got them still number 2 if Georgia can somehow hang on to being Georgia, quite frankly. Even after the injury to Brock Bowers, Carson Beck has come along. They've got McConkey, still running around out there. Came back from his injury, just in time for Brock Bowers to be taken out. And it's going to take some time for Brock Bowers to get back into the offense once he comes back from that injury. So, of the scenarios that I see that are most likely, I see Michigan, Oklahoma number 2. I've got Washington number 3, and I'm with you. I've got Alabama. If Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game and Oklahoma beats Texas, Alabama gets into the playoff. That's the only hope for Alabama to get there, but I think it is certainly a good possibility. You know, if Texas wins that Red River rematch, Alabama's out. There's no way that that one loss against Texas, that is a one loss team, that comes back and wins that rematch, Alabama's got no shot, no matter if they win the SEC championship game or not. But if uh, Texas wins and Georgia wins, I've got Oregon beating Washington in another scenario. So you would have Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, and Texas, because you've got those 2 rematches in championship games. So they will have the conference championship under their belt. Florida State, they have looked vulnerable even at full strength. When you've got Duke playing this week, there's a good chance you're going to be playing North Carolina at the end of the year for the ACC championship game. There's a lot of carnage that can happen. We're just getting into the second half of the season, but I think this is a good pit stop to kind of re-look at the top 10, top 12, and see who we think is on a collision course to be in that top 4 rankings. And so officially, I'm going to say that Michigan, Oklahoma, Washington, Alabama. I'm a Texas guy. I want Texas to win the Red River rematch. It's just going to be a hard game. That's just plain and simple of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one more point I want to make about Michigan here, and I might get a little bit of pushback here, and that's fine. Michigan has been playing great, no doubt, but Michigan, in a way, kind of reminds me of Florida State 2013. Now that team was otherworldly, like in terms of just pure dominance. That was one of the best teams of all time. But it should also be noted that FSU didn't exactly face a tough schedule, and the same thing with Michigan here. They're not exactly facing a tough schedule either, Ed. And I think Michigan fans, like after they're done screaming at me and they have time to actually think, they might realize, yeah, you're kind of right. Now that being said, of course, I know that Michigan can only play who's in front of them, and I get that. But it should be noted that a large part of their dominance has been due to not playing the easiest schedule, and of course, they will be put to the test when they play the Penn States of the world, the Ohio States of the world. So again, I don't want to take anything away from Michigan, but that's just I think that just needed to be said.
And that's certainly a fair point. Michigan did have their chances to get a tougher schedule. They just haven't. But look out for next year when they get USC. They're going to get, I believe, Oregon on their schedule along with Penn State. If I'm remembering it correctly, they are going to have one of the toughest schedules. And not to mention their non-conference has the Longhorns going to Ann Arbor in the Big House for the second game of the season. So you take Penn State, Oregon, USC, and Texas on in one season, that is going to be a murderer's row. But you know what? Harbaugh has that thing built up to a level that they can handle that. It's just, will it happen? That's all it is. They can handle it? Will they get through it? That's what we're looking for. Now, considering everything that's happening with Harbaugh right now, will he stay in Ann Arbor? Will he go? It reminds me of an old Clash song. Will they stay? Will he stay? Will he go now? Who knows? But as it stands now, he is contracted through next season. So we expect him to be at Michigan at this point. And that's going to be a fantastic measuring bar throughout the season next year, going into the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, absolutely. And personally, I think the whole thing with Jim Harbaugh is just a complete BS witch hunt, but that's a story for another time. Real quick, we've got 6.5 minutes left, so why don't we go ahead and go into the upcoming games this weekend? And one game I want to talk about real quick, Ed, is Tennessee Alabama. I find that to be a very intriguing matchup. Of course, we know that last year Tennessee beat Alabama for the first time in 1,000 years, and that was a huge, huge win for Tennessee. Obviously, but looking at the matchup this year, I do think Alabama's going to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think Alabama's going to win, like, I would say, like, maybe 30 to 19, which is a sound win. That is a double digit win, but not a big blowout by any means. And you compare their quarterbacks. I mentioned Milroe before, whereas I said that Milroe has gotten better each game, and then Joe Milton for Tennessee. Now, I don't think Joe Milton is a bad quarterback per se. Like, if you look at his stats, nothing about his number screams bad quarterback. Okay, I think he's been all right for Tennessee. I know right now Tennessee is 5-1 or 6-1. I believe Tennessee is 5-1. So Joe Milton hasn't really done anything to lose them um, any games for the most part. So while he hasn't been bad per se, he also hasn't really jumped out, so to speak. So I do like Alabama here. I think Milroe is the better quarterback, and I think he has gotten better throughout the season. But what about you, Ed? If you had any thoughts on this game, or if there were other games that we didn't talk about before that you want to go over real quick?
I'm so excited that you asked me about this game. I am I am been looking forward to this one. And really, I think it does come down to over the course of the season, the play calling for each team has gone completely different directions. Last week, I saw the play calling for Tennessee just become shelled into that 5 yard, hitch, 5 yard swing, running game, not letting Joe Milton turn it loose. Why? Because he is who he is. He's a great deep ball thrower, but he's not an accurate deep ball thrower. You can throw it out of the stadium and hit the goalpost that's sitting in the river out there from last year, but it doesn't mean that you can hit somebody on a 9 route, with inside leverage. That has nothing to do with either one or the other. There's a reason there is a long drive golf competition that's not full of golfers. There is a difference on that. On the other side, the play calling for Alabama has gotten more expansive, has gotten a little wider in its breadth. You're seeing Milroe grow up. And one of the things that I've actually spoken with some of the personalities of Crane and Co., another great podcast that you and I both watch, is Tennessee likes to bring the heat. Well, that bringing that heat is actually going to create a clearer picture for Milroe to see down the field, and he can either let loose, or if the play is breaking down faster, he can escape faster. That is world a world beater on using his legs, but he has great deep ball touch. So he can either hit those long shots when they're there, or he can escape the pocket fairly quickly and beat you on that 3rd and 8. Keep those chains moving down the field. Alabama wants to pride itself on running the ball this year. Part of that is the QB run, and that QB run is a part of their passing game. The RPOs, the designed QB powers, the designed options that they're running out of, 11 personnel. Those are things that Jalen Milroe is learning to work with, and he's going to get better as the years go on of him running that offense. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how each play calling system from Tennessee and Alabama, will they continue to go that way, or are they going? Will Tennessee continue to shrink down its play calling? Will Alabama continue to grow its play calling, or will they both kind of move toward each other in that during the course of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And personally, I think the game is going to be close through the first three quarters, and then I think Alabama is going to pull away in the fourth quarter. But Ed, that's pretty much all the time that we have. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Coast to Coast Sports. And once again, thank you so much to Texas Ed for graciously filling in for Maddie. Guys, if you want to find us on Twitter, I'm at David_Street17. Again, that's at David_Street17. And Ed, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter or the X or however you want to call it. I'm at Ed Smith 7133. Hook 'em.
And go Gators. All right, guys, until next time.